Hello shrimpers, Armand here from Shrimpstop. Hope everybody's doing well. First off, we'd like to apologize for the lack of content over the last couple of months on our channel. With the growth of our online store and a destroyed hard drive with lots of footage, we were put in a place where we just didn't have time left in the day to reshoot and redo videos. We apologize for that, and we'll try to rectify this as soon as possible by redoing most of the videos that we had lined up. So sit back and enjoy. The first video back might cause some drama, but if you like drama, how about subscribing and hitting that bell notification to know when our next videos are uploaded. Now for the drama part. The reason for that is that we've got so many different types and shades of blue shrimp that everybody gives it a different name in a different part of the country, different part of the world, and from breeder to breeder. In this instance, we're going to look at what we would call a blue dream shrimp. Now, a blue dream shrimp is also known as a blue topaz. Some people call it blue diamonds. There's tons of names, and from what you are seeing on your screen, you might call it something else, but for now I would call it a blue dream shrimp, just to keep it as simple as possible. What we would call a blue dream shrimp is a shrimp that is a royal blue color, complete from the top of its head to the bottom of its tail. It is completely blue. There's no other shades of darker blue or lighter blue or black. It is just royal blue from start to finish. But at the end of the day, whatever you call this blue shrimp, it is still a neocaridina shrimp. So the same rules that would apply with cherries or fire reds or chocos or oranges, it all stays the same. Same water parameters, same tank specifications, same light specifications, same plants, same everything. Everything just stays the same. So for the people that didn't see our previous cherry video, we'll do a quick rundown of what you need to keep and breed these guys successfully. The first thing that we would like to cover is the fact that keeping shrimp is very, very addictive. So be forewarned, if you get one type, the chances are very, very good that you would end up with multiple tanks for different colors and different types of shrimp. So see this as your public service announcement. Keeping them will probably lead to more tanks. So number one, tank. You can basically keep neocardinas in any size tank that you want or have, but we would advise a tank size of at least 1.5 foot and bigger. Generally buy or use the biggest tank that you can possibly get at that point in time. We prefer our breeder setups to be 2 foot in size, approximately 60 liters, and we get great success. Now, the bigger that your tank size is, the better and more stable your water conditions are. So that's very important, especially if you go over at some point later to harder to keep shrimp like caridinas. They're not impossible for starter shrimp, but they are much, much harder. Now that the tank size is out of the way, we can move over to what to put into your tanks. Now, you can make this very expensive or inexpensive for yourself. It depends on what you, the hobbyist and keeper, want to get out of your tanks. The cheapest substrate that you would find for your shrimp tanks would probably be something like pool filter sand or any sand substrate that you can either get at a builder's or at a pet shop. It depends solely on what you have available to you and again on how much you want to spend. Now in most of our tanks we've got ADA Amazonia. It is on the highest scale of substrates that you can use, but in our opinion it is by far the best active substrate for keeping shrimp. The results speak for themselves. The amount of babies that reach adulthood is a lot more than any of the other substrates that we've ever used. The bonus on the Amazonia is that it is a buffering substrate, which keeps your water at a constant pH, and you are able to grow most of the plants that you would find in the aquatic hobby in it as well. Now, the downside, of course, is the monetary value of the soil, and as well as the fact that in time the buffering capability of the substrate goes down. But knowing that, we still prefer putting ADA in all of our tanks. Putting ADA with neocaridina, as some might say, is spoiling them or going overboard, because they don't need that. Neos are comfortable in most water conditions. Again, you can even keep them on a bare bottom tank where there is nothing, it is just the glass that they sit on. It can be done. Now, the biggest reason why we have a substrate in our tanks is to have plants in our tanks. Breeder setups normally don't have plants planted in the substrate, especially if they're using active soil. The active soil sole purpose is to buffer the water. That is why it's there. It is not for planting. But in most tanks where people keep shrimp, we've got plants planted in there. The general rule is match your plants to the substrate that you have or the setup that you want. Most shrimp tanks have got live plants in there. The reason for that being is it's just more than a decoration. It is for the shrimp to graze on as well. You would see them grazing through moss and some stem plants and stuff like that. So add some live plants to your tank. We prefer moss regardless of the type that you use. We find wassertang, which is technically not a moss, to be the best type that you can add to your tank, and we've got that in most of our tanks as well. After plants and substrate, we move over to filtration. You can get away with anything. What we would advise is sponge filters, preferably, in our opinion, double sponge filters. You can use them the regular way, or you can do conversions of them where you add power heads or hang-on filters to them. In some of our tanks we've got sponge filters as well as hang-on the back filters, canister filters, and so on. Again, it depends on the type of setup and type of shrimps that we are keeping in that setup. Next up is heating. If you can keep your temperature of your tank stable at 21 degrees during the year, if it gets really cold like in Europe and in America where you go into the minuses, you would need to heat your tank in some form to keep the temperature above 18 degrees. Now, generally it's cheaper to heat the room than individual tanks, especially if you have more than one tanks. Between 21 and 24 degrees is the perfect temperature to keep neocaridinas on. Now, the most important part of this setup is going to be your water, and shrimps need water. It might sound like a foregone conclusion, but we've had people arriving with hamster cages to buy shrimp. So shrimp need water, people. Give them water. Let's get into a little bit more detail about the water. The prescribed range for pH of neocaridina shrimp is about 6.5 to 7.8, but they can still live if they fall out of this set pH range. pH is a measure of how acidic or basic water is. The range goes from 0 to 14, with 7 being the most neutral. A pH of less than 7 is considered acidic, where a pH of greater than 7 is considered as hard. In our tanks, we'd like to keep our pH around 7.2, but in some tanks it goes up to about 7.3, 7.4. So if you keep in those ranges, you will get the best results. If you're unsure about what your pH of your tap water or rainwater or well water is, we advise you getting something like a pH pen that will test the water instantly, or a test kit. Now, test kits are important, especially if you go over to harder to keep shrimp. It is important for you to know your water conditions at any given time if you are experiencing problems. Next up, we've got the TDS. The TDS is the total dissolved solids in your water, and it refers to any minerals or salt or metals that is dissolved in the water. The TDS range for neocaridina shrimp is 150 to 250. In most of our tanks it is about 220 or thereabouts before we try and reduce it. The best way to reduce your TDS is by water changes, where you add water with a low TDS to the tank that will gradually bring the TDS down. Something to keep in mind is that in time your TDS in your tanks will climb naturally. That is because of food that you add to your tank and over time with evaporation. So it's good to keep an eye on your TDS for indication of what's going on in your tank. Again, you can use something like a TDS pen or test kits. But the actual most important part of your water to know is the GH and KH. The GH is the general hardness and the KH is the carbonate hardness of your water. You need to know what it is before you add any shrimp to your tanks. Again, you can get test kits for that just to find out what it is. If your ranges are way beyond the prescribed ranges, which is a GH of 6 to 8 or a KH of 2 to 5, if it is way out of these ranges, you would need to look at either using RO water or rainwater and remineralize that to get to the correct ranges. We cannot emphasize this more, that this part is going to be the crucial part in your water. So make sure that these are within range. If you don't want to go out and buy a pH or TDS pen or your GH and KH tests or a complete test kits, most pet stores will test your water for you for free. When you get the results, you would be able to do some things to bring your water in line. For example, if your pH is too high, add some wood to your water or some leaf litter. That will reduce the pH of your tank, but with that it will increase the TDS. So keep stuff like that in mind. For every action there's an equal reaction. Please remember to cycle your tanks properly before you want to add any shrimp or fish to your tanks. When we say cycle, we refer to the ammonia or nitrogen cycle, which converts ammonia to nitrite to nitrates. That is done by the bacteria that is in your tank or in your filter that breaks down the ammonia. You get products that will help you cycle your tank faster and also that will break down ammonia. We use Chem Prime on all our tanks and we use it once a week, regardless if we do a water change, a water top up, or if we just put a hand or a net into our tanks. It is very important that you don't get ammonia spikes, because ammonia will kill off your shrimp. Now with the tank part covered, if there's anything that I missed or you would like clarity on, please put a comment down below and we will answer it. Don't be scared, we all started somewhere in this hobby and it's better to ask than to guess. So now it's time to go buy some shrimp, and there's a couple of things that we would say that you should note when buying your first ones. First off, and most important, is to buy them from a reputable breeder or online store, or to go get them yourself at your local pet store. We would advise you get at least 5, but aim to get 10 because that increases your gene pool when you start off. Get them as small as possible, but big enough for you to sex them between males and females, and that can be done when they're just over 1 centimeter. We would advise you get them as small as possible because shrimp only have a lifespan of about 18 to 24 months depending on water conditions. So the smaller you get them, the longer the lifespan in your tanks will be. Smaller shrimp also travel better and acclimate better to water conditions. Another thing when you add your shrimp is to keep your water conditions as stable as possible. How to spot the difference between a male and a female? Females are generally larger and more colorful than the males. You can always look at the stomach and tail section where the females has got a bended or a round stomach, and the males generally has a flat and sharp edged stomach section. Now after you get your shrimps home, please drip acclimate them accordingly. It takes approximately an hour to 2 hours to do it correctly. There is no need to rush this stage. Now that they're in your tank, you might ask, what am I going to feed them? Well, they are omnivores and will eat basically anything you give them, but their main food source is produced naturally in their tank and is called biofilm. Note that neocaridina don't eat aquarium plants, but they eat from it. You will always find them actively searching through plants, grazing on it, going through the substrate, rolling it around, actively looking and eating biofilm. They are not like, let's say, Amano and Nerite snails that will literally eat algae. So make sure you've got enough biofilm in your tanks for them at all times. Also make sure to add some leaves to their diet. Fresh and dried leaves are 100% fine, where Indian almond leaves will be on top of the list. On the fresh side, you can look at stuff like stinging nettles or spinach, which you should be able to find relatively easy. They will also be fine with normal fish flakes or any other processed foods. On the processed side, there is one food that we can actively endorse, which is Bacter AE. It is by far our most favorite food, and it promotes and grows biofilm. It's a powdered form food that covers your whole tank, which makes it an excellent food not only for larger shrimps but also your babies. Now that everybody is fed and they are happy, it's time to start breeding these guys. Step 1. Put on some berry white and light a candle. Well, it's a lot easier than that. Just give them some time. It will happen, it always does. Breeding usually happens after the female sheds her exoskeleton. You will see the males are actively swimming around looking for the female. When this happens, there's a pheromone that is released into the water and they are looking for that female at that time. If you're lucky enough to see the breeding happen, you'll see the male jump on top of the female's back where the eggs are located behind her eyes. The breeding process is over relatively quickly, and the eggs will then move from behind the eyes to underneath the female's belly. The female is buried at this stage. It's called berries because it looks like a bunch of berries being carried around. Now, this part will take approximately 30 days for the babies to be born, and they are born as mini replicas of the adults. Dependent on the water conditions, there can be more male to female or the other way around. Keep in mind that these new babies won't move much in the first days and will stay basically in the same spot where they have been born. So it is a good idea at this stage to feed a powder form of food, either Bacter AE or pollen. It will take approximately 90 days for these baby shrimp to grow to breeding size again, where this whole breeding process will start over again. At this stage, when they are breeding, keep your water conditions as stable as possible. Don't try and do too much. Let things happen naturally. Now, if you're one of those people that go away on holidays or weekends, you might stress, what's going to happen with my shrimp? Well, they are very, very easy in that regard, where you don't have to stress too much. We would advise the following steps to make sure that you don't come home with dead shrimp in your tank. First off, most important is remove your heaters from your tanks. If something goes wrong, 90% of the time it's usually a heater that broke and it boiled off all your water or something ridiculous as that. The following thing you would want to do is, before you go, make sure that your filter has been cleaned or is clean and running properly, and top off your tank to the maximum amount of water that it can go. Then add some Indian almond leaves if it isn't in your tanks already, and give them something like a holiday food or feed them accordingly before you leave. In the time that you're gone, they'll be 100% fine and graze off of the Indian almond leaf and the biofilm that's in the tank, so you don't have to do anything besides that. Well, now that everything is said and done, let's just watch these guys for a few minutes more. In this time, we'd like you to vote on our next video. So, 1 for a product review, a technical review, or 2 for a shrimp tank companion. What else can you put into your tank? So that's 1 for product, 2 for tank mate. Vote now. Okay, so same old story, guys. Remember to vote in the comment section below 1 or 2 for whichever following video you'd like to see. Thanks for watching to the end. Please remember to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification, and share the video, please. If you'd like to see any of our other videos, please have a look here or here. Thanks and goodbye.
Stop.